Welcome back to the shop. In this episode, I'm going to make a float frame for this painting. If you're one of those people who thinks that this is not a painting or it's not artwork, well, it might not be artwork, but it's definitely a painting. But if it's not your cup of tea, you may as well leave now because this video is not going to get any better. But if you're thinking, hey, I'd like to make a painting like that and frame it for my house, stick around and I'll give you all the details. There's a few reasons why, in my view, a painting like this works, and it has everything to do with the materials. So let's go ahead, take a close look at the painting, and then we'll get started on making the frame. First, let's take a measurement of the painting, and then we'll look at the structure. The painting is 15.5 by 15.5. You could make it 20 by 20, 30 by 30, whatever. You could change the size of the squares, that doesn't really matter. The things that are important is the canvas is stretched over a braced panel. What that does is it gives you something to paint against. It's a hard surface that the brush won't keep pushing the canvas sort of out of the way. So you'll stretch your canvas over the structure, over the braced panel, and you'll notice that this is raw canvas. This is not primed. If this were primed canvas, this painting would look totally different and, in my view, not very good. The paint is oil paint. It doesn't have the sheen that acrylic paints have. You could paint it with acrylic, but I prefer oil. Another byproduct of using oil is you get these oil stains in the raw canvas, and I kind of like that. It's very subtle, but I think it looks good. I also like the pencil marks. So you can see that this painting has been gridded out, and then the color is just mixed, and there's no pattern here. It's just completely random, and it just makes this very simple pattern. So in my view, it all comes down to the materials, and you have this sort of kind of border that I like, and I also like that the squares are not quite finished on the ends, so it gives it this sort of a little bit of a floating effect. So that gives you a good idea on how to make this painting. You can use acrylic, but I just kind of prefer oil. Another thing that I did do with this that I don't think I mentioned is after I stretched the unprimed canvas on the braced panel, I primed the canvas with a clear water-based polyurethane. And the reason why I did that is an unprimed canvas is very prone to staining. So this painting actually did have a stain on it, I think right here, and I was able to clean it off. So that's something I recently started doing, and it's just kind of a nice thing. It's a little bit of insurance. So for the frame, what I want to do is have a 1/4 inch reveal all the way around this painting. Maybe 3/8 would be better because this bounces out a little bit right here. So a 3/8 reveal all the way around this painting. So if I measure the painting, I'm at 15.5. I'll add 3/4 to that measurement, and I'll make the inside measurement of the frame 16.25 by 16.25. We'll go ahead and start milling the MDF up now. That's what I'm going to use for the outside of the frame, and the inside of the frame will be made from a different material. I just realized that I may have confused a few people with the whole primed canvas part of that last clip. When I said primed canvas, I'm referring to the canvas that you're going to find at most art supply stores. It's going to be primed with a white gesso, giving the canvas a smooth white surface. When I said that I primed this canvas, I really meant that I sealed the canvas. So I went over it with a clear water-based polyurethane, and that'll give you the same look and feel as an unprimed canvas, but it seals it and protects it a little bit from staining. Now let's go ahead and make the frame. This is going to be a painted frame, so I can use MDF. This is an offcut from a project that Walter was working on. It's 24 millimeter, which is a little uncommon when it comes to MDF, and it measures just about a full inch, and I think that's going to look good for this project. The first step will be to rip the MDF at 2 inches for the outside of the frame. Now that I have the molding ripped at 2 inches, I can simply just make the frame. I can miter the frame together, or I can make the frame with butt joints as long as the inside measurements are 16 1/4 by 16 1/4. Frames are pretty simple projects, so just do whatever works easiest for you and really what you want to do. Right now I have a dado blade set up in my Powermatic, so I'm going to cut a dado on the back inside of the molding, and that might make it a little bit easier to add the picture frame to the inside of the frame when I get to that part of the project. I've got a sacrificial fence with a hold down clamped to the fence. I'm just going to give the blade a spin just to make sure everything's clear before I start the saw. I'll make this dado cut, or you could call it a rabbit joint, in 2 passes. And I want to make the first pass on a piece of scrap MDF, then I'll make the first pass on the piece of molding, and then I'll adjust the fence and make a second pass on the piece of scrap MDF and check that measurement. Basically, I want the inside of the frame to measure just a little bit taller than the surface of the painting. Once that measurement looks good, I'll make the final pass on the piece of molding. This piece of molding is 8 feet long, and just to make things a little bit easier, I'll cut the molding into 4 equal pieces before cutting the miters on the miter saw. To cut the molding to size, I got started by cutting the first miter. Remember, I want the inside of the frame to be 16 1/4 by 16 1/4. I'm going to burn an inch, holding the inch mark on the inside of that first miter cut, and make a mark out here at 17 1/4. And make sure that I make the cut this way. With that first cut made, I'll come down here and make a mark on my fence. It's just a reminder that this is for this piece of molding. I can make another one if I want. And each time I cut the next piece of molding, the second cut will be with the molding lined up on those marks. So the first cut is with the rabbet facing down and away from the fence. Now I'll flip the molding over with the rabbet facing up and away from the fence and set the molding at those marks that I just made. Now it's easy to get confused if you make a lot of marks on your fence, so try not to do that. If you're making a square frame like I am, all of your pieces should be the same size. Now I can go ahead and use a little wood glue and 1 1/4 nails in the nail gun. And I like to use a wet rag, have one close by to clean up the glue, and also it helps my fingers grip the molding. I'll use a little wood glue and then grip the molding and then fire in the nails, 2 in one side and 1 in the other. I just cut some molding out of 1/2-inch plywood. It measures 1/2 inch by 1 3/4. And I'll picture frame the inside of the frame, resting the molding on this rabbet. You could use miters or you could use butt joints, and I'm going to use butt joints simply because it'll be easier and faster. It's been a day and you can see that the frame is painted. I started with Benjamin Moore's Fresh Start for a primer, always sanding in between coats. And then I added 2 coats of Benjamin Moore's Command, and the color is Dove White. I like the Dove White. It's a little bit softer. It sits down a little bit as opposed to a pure white. Before I attach the painting to the frame, I want to point out that I always try to get the wire as close to the back of the painting as possible, and that way when the painting gets hung, it'll suck up nice and tight against the wall. I'll make sure that the reveals are the same, and then use a piece of foam for downward pressure and attach the painting with a few screws from the bottom. Okay, well, here it is all framed up. And I gotta say, I like it. I like this type of artwork. It almost makes me want to make one really big. Maybe. But let's bring it in the house and hang it on the wall and see how it looks. Okay, well, here's the painting on the wall, and I like it. I like this kind of artwork. I like just a lot of different artwork, realistic paintings, abstract paintings or geometrical abstract paintings, figurative paintings. It really depends on if I like the painting. But this is a fun painting to try to make yourself. If you've thought about painting and don't know what to paint, well, you could paint something like this and it'll get you used to mixing color. It'll get you used to materials. And if you put the time in and you follow along with making the frame and everything, you'll have something that, if you like this painting, a painting that you'll like. So if you've made it this far, I figure maybe you want to see some of the other things that are in this room that I've made, and I'll just kind of go around the room. Some of these have project videos, some of them go back before YouTube. Like the first one we'll talk about, this is, I call it a sign-in desk. In 1999, my wife and I opened an art gallery, which we had for 15 years. And I made a sign-in desk so when people came into the gallery, they could sign a little book. It's made of solid babinga. The dovetails are hand cut. The drawer dividers are sliding dovetails. So it was a pretty major piece. The drawer fronts are one continuous piece of wood. And the drawers are also dovetailed together. I know that if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll see that I build a lot of drawers with screws. I can make hand-cut dovetails, but it's a lot of work, and I kind of have to go back to school because I don't do them all that often and kind of relearn the process. That's the piece that one of the 4 kids is, or the 4 kids are going to fight over, because I think that's one of the better pieces I've made over the years. The next piece is, it's a rondelle. Rondelle is a symbol for the British Royal Air Force. I love the symbols of the stars and bars and the rondelle. And so I was painting them back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. So I have one here. The one over there is made of 169 wooden boxes that are covered in steel, and they all hang on French cleats. The center box, I believe, is 2 inches, and the outside box is 3 inches, and they kind of graduate out to make a concaved painting. I made a bunch of those in sort of a 2 to maybe a 3 or 4 year span, and I sold most of them except for that one, and I think I have one more that is in storage that's on aluminum. That one's on steel. Below that painting is one of my first veneer projects that I posted on YouTube. It's just a little cherry bookcase, and I do have my free hand-drawn plans for that project. They're still on my website. I'll make sure that there's a link in the description below. It's a good project to practice veneer on, and it's a small little project. I could see it at the foot of a bed or something. It works in this room, I think, because there's just a little bit of space underneath that big painting for that little bookcase area. Over here is, this was a pretty major woodworking project for me for YouTube. It's a, I don't know what you call these, server, I think my wife calls it, but it's another veneer project made with walnut veneer, and it has adjustable shelves on the inside, and we use it as a bar. So there's some glasses in there, and of course we have the bar on top. And that is another woodworking project. I'll put links to all these projects in the description. That's a serving tray, and you can see I've got some vodka and some vermouth there. I like martinis, but funny enough, I haven't had a drink since the Super Bowl. I'm never going to quit drinking. I just haven't drank in a while. I'm just trying to get in shape. Next to the server are these little paintings. These are just little still life paintings that I make. You may know that I make little paintings from time to time. I've got this other big rondelle. There's a funny story with this one. This one and a bunch of others that were going to go into an art show, I was making them out in the barn, and at the time the barn didn't really have good heat in it. And so after doing the painting and all, I brought them in the house to hopefully make the paint dry. I was trying to get them ready to go out the door. And I leaned this one against the baseboard heater, not realizing that the heat was on and not realizing it would have such a problem, but it ended up delaminating the aluminum. And then I kind of in a panic tried to stick the aluminum back onto the painting with a J-roller and a clothes iron, and it didn't work. And you can see it's kind of beat up the surface there, but now I like it. So that painting is made in 2000, so 24 years old, and it hasn't moved since. But aluminum does expand. You have to remember that. Everything expands and contracts, and not everything expands and contracts at the same rate. Some materials are different than others. So that, if you follow me on Instagram, I talked about that a little bit, why I think most of these epoxy pour tables are going to fail, because wood moves. That's one of the first rules in woodworking. These little serving trays, the bikini girls, I just like working with the figure. It kind of gives you an opportunity to work with figure ground. If you notice, you have the figure up front, and then you just have geometric shapes in the background, and that creates space. And it's always interesting to see how you can create space as simply as possible. I was planning to make a bunch of serving trays that could also hang on the wall like these are. So on the back of these, there's French cleats. And I decided that it's too much work. It's too much work. You can sell a painting for more than you can sell a serving tray. So even though I think the idea is kind of cool, it doesn't make business sense. I'm better off to make a painting and frame it and sell it for a lot more than you can sell a serving tray for. That's always been my case with furniture and artwork. I've always sold my artwork for a lot more money than I sell my furniture for. And so that's why I took such a big break in making furniture. If you follow my very early videos, I took about a 15-year break, as long as I owned the art gallery, from making furniture, because I was selling paintings for so much more than I could sell my furniture for. I always loved making furniture, and I found the only way I could really do it was by teaching people how to make furniture and then make the furniture on my YouTube channel. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. This painting actually may be sold. I'll let you know if it sells or not. That was the kind of the motivation to go ahead and clean it up and make the frame for it. The client wanted to see what it would look like in a frame, and actually my wife just saw it and she's like, wow, I hope the client doesn't buy it. But I always want to sell stuff because I just want to make more stuff. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time.